Folks, welcome back to the Crossing Swords podcast presented by Batavia Downs Gaming and Hotel. And we have a special offseason episode. Bunty, huge news today in the Sabres world. 10 a.m. sharp, all lights, cameras on the Buffalo Sabres organization. The doors pull open and we have a leasing agreement until 2036. But let me know, how are you feeling outside of that right now? Doing good?
I'm doing good. Well, we don't actually have a lease agreement.
Correct.
We have an arena
naming rights. Yes.
Naming rights extension. So massive news, just so exciting, thrilling. That's exactly what we were all hoping for last night when we went to sleep. We were hoping for a KeyBank Center extension on the naming rights deal. Definitely not hoping for a lease update or news about possible renovations, which I guess the soonest we'll hear anything on that is after the Bills complete their stadium. So forget about that anytime soon. If Mike Harrington is correct with what he tweeted earlier today. But yeah, it was underwhelming, but it created a plethora of fun memes, and the internet had some fun with it earlier this morning.
Yeah, and Josh, I mean, we had the tweet at 8 a.m. That's why I got the lease on my mind, because I thought there'd be a little bit something more when Terry Pegula and then the KeyBank CEO opened those doors. You know, we have Mark Poloncarz there, the mayor of Buffalo there. Thought there'd be, maybe that lease agreement. There's been talks about what's going on there, some bigger news. But, Bunty, on the bright side of things, we got the meme template of the season already, and we're still 71 days away from opening night. Steve Noble, good to see you again. Thank you to everyone hopping into Crossing Swords podcast. A little bit of off-season talk, Bunty, but there's today's presser. There was a lot of pomp and circumstances there. They got the naming rights. Sir, what was going through your head this morning when you first off you saw the video? Great video by the Sabres team, great hype video, and then the only thing coming out being the naming rights, the picture of Pegula with the door, and then a great picture of him wearing a helmet as well.
Yeah, when I woke up and I saw the tweet from the Sabres and about naming rights, I was just like, God, this was my biggest fear, that we think that this is going to be something, and it's absolutely nothing. And I'll be real, I knew I was probably playing it up in my head a little bit more than what it should have been. I knew they weren't going to come out with talk about renovations, but I really thought there was something related to the lease. The fact that they had the mayor of Buffalo, the Erie County executive also there. I thought we were going to hear something about, okay, they worked on something, they figured something out, this is what they're doing. But to be fair to the Sabres, it's not like they were advertising like this is a really big deal. It was a press release that was sent out to the media that was then shared on Twitter. And then when people saw it, people like me then were like, whoa, what could this mean? And so I'm partially responsible for the overhyping it, but still, maybe it was some internal optimism, hoping that we were going to get something. The timing of it was weird.
Yes.
Personally, for me, it's announcing the extension of a sponsorship that's already on the building. This isn't some new company coming in that you're putting on the building. KeyBank has already been on the building for a long time. So I don't get all the big circumstances for announcing an extension. I know it matters, and really at the end of the day, this was just the Sabres giving KeyBank some PR, some free airtime and the local airwaves, because really this could have been sent out in an email for all I was concerned.
It definitely, and I think at least the part that I'm keep thinking about is, yeah, it's you want to help KeyBank out. They're really supporting the team financially with the naming rights and all that. But to have those big doors there and to have such a big moment of your owner, and when it was happening, I was like, oh, this is going to be the best thing that's ever going to happen. I don't know why. I'm a dumb fan. I think about it, I'm like, oh, this something as big is going to happen. We're getting some good news about this organization. And then it's just the naming rights. And it was a bit of a letdown, and there wasn't too much after that. But something that wasn't too big of a letdown, Bunty, is since our last show, we've had a couple Sabres news in terms of just roster stuff. Connor Timmins deal finally gets done. I believe Byram wasn't officially re-signed our last time we talked. Sabres roster is looking a lot more put together. Like, this is how it's going to look opening night. I guess first question for you, the way the team is set up right now, is this what the Sabres are going to roll into 71 days from now? And if so, how are you feeling about the current construction of the Buffalo Sabres roster here on July 30th?
Yeah, so I actually think the roster is better than what it was a couple months ago. People can debate me all they want about losing JJ Peterka and what that means for the team overall. I just don't think they did enough. Like it's the same thing 3 off seasons in a row where you're like, they got some talent, but are they going to do enough with it? And they didn't do enough with it. I mean, even if they would have kept Peterka, I would have wanted them to make additions. And what did they really do? They swapped Peterka for Kesselring and Doan. I like Kesselring. I think that's going to help out power. Doan has potential as a third line forward at this point in time. Maybe he starts here on the 4th line, but probably a better mix overall for the 3rd line. You bring in Connor Timmins, who, analytically speaking, looks like he's ready for a little bit more of a role. Good third pair defenseman. Byram resigns. That's the shock of the offseason because it seemed like he was going to be a goner for sure. We were saying how he seemed like the most likely player entering the offseason to be gone. A few other smaller moves. It's there's nothing in the metrics that can point to this team being better. If you want to believe that they're a playoff team or that they're going to take a step forward, you have to believe in a few things. One, you have to believe in internal development where guys are just going to have growth and get better. And number 2, you have to, the other way you believe in is if you are a believer that getting better defensively and playing more balanced hockey is the way to winning more games. And I can buy into both of those to a certain extent, but that's not making up like over a 10, 11, 12 points. If this team suddenly gets hot and they figure it out, like good for them, but there's nothing in the numbers that say that that's going to happen. So like you look at it last year, they were a good scoring team. I believe they were 10th.
They're 10th in the league
in goals, and they were 29th in goals allowed. And I know those aren't the deep analytic numbers that talk about expected goals for and all the other deep things that we can talk about. But losing Peterka, everybody's going to talk about, like, how do you make up his 27 goals? I'm actually less concerned about that than most because you do have a person like Josh Norris who's going to enter the lineup, and he does have 30-plus goal ability. And, yes, he always gets hurt, but you can't assume injuries in sports, in my opinion. And while his history isn't good, Norris, if he plays 60-plus games, he's going to score 20-plus goals. So that's going to make up some of it. Jack Quinn was awful last year. Is he going to be as bad this upcoming season as he was last year? Even if he was, that's 15 goals for you right there. You have some guys like Doan that show some power play potential that they can show up on the power play. So I think scoring-wise, it really comes down to finishing. Can you rely on Thompson, Tuck, Norris, Quinn to finish at a high level? You might see a little regression possibly in goals from Zucker and McLeod. And then the big part defensively. Do these talented defensemen finally play like the defensemen that you expect them to? If Byram is with Dahlin, fine. Like everybody's like, oh, Byram stinks. Well, with Dahlin, Byram's fine. Yep. So your first pair is probably going to be okay. Everybody's down on power. And I get it. Like, he's not the physical defenseman that people want out of a number 1 overall pick. But, like, Power is a good offensive player already. If Kesselring can bring some of that physicalness and take care of some of that side of the game and allow Power to focus on what he's best at, you probably get a little bit better version of Power. And then you got 2 good defensive pairs. Nothing's going to help Samuelson at this point in time. You just have to pray for the best. But Timmins is an upgrade over Clifton, in my opinion. And then your depth, you have Zach Jones, and you have obviously possibly Ryan Johnson getting more opportunities. If they play better defensively, that's going to help you in net. Yeah, Bryson, of course.
70 forever.
That'll help you in net with UPL. 2 years ago, UPL was very good. Last year, he was really bad. Can we get a middle ground from him? If we can get a middle ground, that'll help out with them defensively. And then Alex Lyon, he's not the best goalie in the world, but he's sure better than the backups they've had in recent memory. So
a lot younger too.
I look at the Sabres right now, and I think the way they're constructed as is on July 30th, this is an 85-point team. If they can get things going, if they can find some momentum, who's to say they can't get in the low 90s? Like, I don't want to say like that's impossible. I'm not going to predict it because I'm not going to be a fool and do the same thing I did last year. I do learn from my mistakes. But the frustrating part is just as easily as they could get 91, 92 points, they could easily get 77, 78 points. But I do think that 83 to 87 point range is probably the highest probability of where they're going to end up at this point in time.
Yeah, and Bunty, you went into a lot of the different facets. Basically, the entire lineup of the Sabres is just one big gamble and question mark from Kevin Adams. And I like what Steve and Josh will talk about. Like, you lose Peterka, but there's areas of the Sabres games last year where if they can get better in that power play and their special teams, they'll win a couple extra more games. And I look at Josh here too. I didn't think about that, but there's a lot of teams in the East, especially the Metropolitan, who aren't as strong as we've seen in years prior. And the Sabres need to actually have winning records against these teams going into it. And we have a segment we'll go into a bit of just, it feels like Kevin Adams is gambling with a parlay where everything really needs to hit for this team to get to that next level. I'm with you, Bunty, where it feels like this team is better, but by how much, it doesn't feel like it's enough to get over the hump unless this is the year that all the pieces come together and the magic happens and the Lindy Ruff style coach team comes together. And I'm not saying that's not going to happen, but you're putting a lot of faith and reliance somewhere there is no right for there to be. Basically, they hadn't proven that in the past. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of concerns and because this Sabres problem, like you talked about earlier, they're 10th in the league in the goal scoring. They didn't have an issue scoring, especially even strength. Their issue was defensively. They gave up 3.5 goals a game last year, third highest in the entire NHL. They had to be better defensively, one, to help out UPL, but just so they can win more games. So a lot of it's going to come down to, obviously, that Peterka trade. They're going to have to hit a home run there of Kesselring being able to be the guy to get Owen Power to that superstardom level that we haven't fully seen yet. Give him that stability. Kesselring can play on both sides of the puck. That should be good there. And then the dark horse of Josh Doan, a player that I'm already super excited for, Bunty. Just seeing the way he plays, it feels like a Lindy Ruff guy and how he's inserted into the lineup. But we're at this point now of this looks like the team going into October. Where are you, come next season? We're 10 games in. Are you going to take a ton of stock in those first 10 games for this Buffalo team, or with a Lindy Ruff coach team, are you going to give it some time? And it feels like every Sabres year, the first 10 games are just absolute chaos anyways.
It's vital for this team to get off to a fast start. You look at the schedule, they have a ton of home games in October, early on in the season. So look at how the Sabres finished at home last season. They were dynamite at home at KeyBank Center in the last quarter of the season. They need to start off building off of that and get themselves some games in the bank. Everybody talks about how they were in a playoff position heading into Thanksgiving last year, right on the cusp of being on one. They were barely there. Like they got up to that 0-3 start. They had a good stretch. Like they were at like that 90-point pace, but like they weren't playing great hockey. They were playing all right. just good enough to be in the conversation. What the Sabres really need is they need like a start where like they get like off to like a 10-5 start, to where like they give them some ability to survive like a mini like 3-game losing streak or something. So to where we're not like, oh my God, it's all over. Because if they're 5-5 and they lose like 4 in a row to go to like 5-9, you're already putting yourself in a hole. You're like, well, we just had a lot of home games here. Now we have to win games on the road, and you're trying to make up contests, and it gets really tough. And then you just repeat the same cycle. This team needs to get off to a good start, not only for to set themselves up, but for their confidence and to show that, like, oh yes, we actually are capable of winning games. And I don't think it's impossible. To get off to a hot start. We've seen bad Sabres teams win a lot of games early in the season before.
Yes.
We've seen one win 10 games in a row. So I believe it was 10 games in a row, that famed horrible, these guys are good, scary,
yeah,
good.
10-0.
That part is sad to me, because that was one of the best lines Rick Jeanneret has ever used. And then he used it on one of the crappiest teams ever.
That was a fun first start of the year, though.
It was, but it's kind of like now every time I hear that, I think of like 2.0 version, where it's like, this felt a little forced right there. But no, it's pivotal they get off to a hot start, because if this team goes into Christmas and they're 6-7 games over 500, and when I say over 500, I'm talking like you could be like 26, like I don't know, like 20, 15-5. Like I'm not saying like counting overtime losses.
Yeah.
I'm talking like points wise.
Yes.
Like I think that could be enough to really keep things going. We all act like they haven't been in any playoff races in recent years, but it was just 3 years ago they had 91 points. So I do think Lindy has taken a little bit more control in voicing his opinions on what he needs in a roster. I believe that Adams and Kekalainen have done more to accommodate the style of hockey that Lindy wants to play. The funny thing is Lindy has this reputation in Buffalo as being a coach that his teams can't score, and it's always led by great goaltending. But his later days in Buffalo, and especially in Dallas and New Jersey, his reputation is really like his teams can score and they can generate offense. They just the goaltending stinks. They don't play defense. So what's interesting is you get some of these guys that might be a little bit more defensively responsible, and you wonder, well, if Lindy had teams that scored a lot in the past, does he think, okay, the scoring is a result of my system? Now if I get better defensive players, we'll still have the scoring, but now we're going to be more responsible. Like in theory, that seems to be what they're going for is, okay, we lost one good offensive player, but we have the whole rest of the team. We're still going to be a good enough goal scoring team, but now we have enough defense to not finish 29th in goals allowed. But that seems a lot easier to say than to actually execute. And we've seen the Sabres team go from third in the league in goals to like in the bottom 10, back up to 10th. So I don't even know if we can like rely on them consistently being a top 10 goal scoring team again. But it does appear that they're banking on the same core scoring goals while being more responsible on the other side of the ice.
Yeah, and I think that's what I'm telling myself too, is they're just from a numbers perspective, last year into this season, they're losing, statistical goal scoring at even strength. So that means they have to improve the rest of the way they play. I think they've done that, especially in that Peterka trade. Like Peterka was not a two-way forward. Like he was not good in his own end. He could put up points. And this move here that they made really shores up both sides of the puck. But that also means the Sabres need to be a bit better on their power play. Their power play was like at 18% last year. They had that stretch where they weren't scoring for a very long time. And I think that's obviously the biggest hurdle this team's going to have to overcome. It's not, something specific on the ice, but it feels more like a mentality thing, Bunty, where it feels like every single year you can point to a single, stretch of this is where the wheels fell off and the season ended this past year. Obviously, Dahlin gets hurt. They have the 13-game losing streak. Like you said, they're in a playoff spot before, and then we know what happens after that. If this team can somehow just not have that happen, it's a totally different thing where, they go 500 in that stretch. Maybe they're obviously not 12 points out of the playoff race, but it feels like we both said the Sabres are marginally better of just being an overall better team right now than at the start of the offseason. But for the Sabres to make the postseason, they need to be better than marginally better. And it feels like Kevin Adams is banking on a lot of things having to go right for this team to make the playoffs. Are there things that you see that these things have to happen, like legs on a parlay where they all hit, this team can make it to the postseason? Are there some big things for you that you see needing to happen next year for Buffalo to end this 14-year drought?
I don't have anything specific. Like,
okay.
I don't have, like, I'm not going to tell you like Tage needs to score 50 goals, but I will say, like, if he does,
his course needs to mean exact amount. If he gets that, the team's good.
If Tage scored 50, I believe the Sabres are making the playoffs because that means he's elevating everybody around him. These are the things that need to happen. You need to not finish in the bottom 3 or 4 in the league in goals allowed. At least get to like 20th in that. Where, like, if you can keep your scoring where it is and you get a little bit and you make strides in your goals allowed, that is a must have. You need to have a goalie with a save percentage over 90. It's shocking to see goalies with like 890, like 89 save percentages. Like that's so bad. And then some goalies beneath that with the Sabres. That's horrible. And I would say they need to be a top 15 scoring team. So they need Tage to be a 40-plus goal scorer. They need Tuck to be around 30. They'll need Norris to be 25 to 30. One of Quinn or McLeod has to be 20-plus. And then you need Zucker and McLeod to be around 40 points. Because that'll tell me that the offense is still there. And with the players they added defensively, I think they're going to be better. Goaltending, I think they're going to be better. One thing that is interesting too, and we'll talk, I want to hear your parlay in a second. The thing about getting better defensively that hockey fans undervalue, but I think it's important to discuss, is that lower scoring hockey leads to overtime more. Overtime more gets you free loser points. The Sabres have had a high variance type of game where like they're winning games like 5-2, like 5-4, whatever. Like, but then they're losing games where they're blowing 2-goal leads, 3-goal leads,
4-goal leads.
If you can be a better defensive team, 2-1 ain't a bad way to play hockey. Like, it's boring, but think about it. You go in the third period, you're down 2-1. You get a goal late at any point, you go to overtime. Like, there's an aspect to where if they can be better defensively, if they can be better in net, maybe they can steal an extra 5 or 6 points just getting games to overtime. And then another way of looking at it too is how many blown leads did they have last year in games that they should never have lost? You hold on to a handful of those games, that's another 5 points. So maybe it's a weird way of looking at it, but like if you can hold on to your leads a little bit better, if you can find a way to get games to overtime against better opponents, like maybe when you're playing Florida or some high-level offensive team, just try to tough out a rugged game and get it to overtime. Like the New York Islanders aren't like the most talented team in the world, but they should always be in contention for the playoffs because of the brand they play. And there's a couple other teams in the NHL that are the same way. So I'm hoping that while they might not be as talented on paper, that the changes in their playing style can compensate for some of this. And there is something to like Lindy Ruff. I'm not going to say like he's an amazing, incredible coach, but like he is a much better coach than what the Sabres have had in the last decade. And throughout his history, even though he doesn't consistently make the playoffs, he makes the playoffs like half his seasons. He doesn't typically go long stretches of missing the playoffs. Like he'll miss it, then he'll make it. He'll miss it, then he'll make it. Like he rebounds a lot. So what that kind of tells me is he's a coach that can identify problems and poor spots on a roster, and he can coach around it and get them to a level where they can get to that next point. But he's not good at taking that next step of taking them from point A to B to taking them to over the top. So I do think that, like, I'm not picking playoffs, but like there's a part of me that is like, what if Lindy does have that bounce in him where, like, he's been with this team for a year. He saw what he didn't like during practice, during games, watching film, and that he might know the fixes. Maybe we don't, because like the problem with analytics is this. Analytics tells you everything that has happened. They don't take, and you can project growth, you can project development, yes, but that's an inexact science. So while certain guys play a certain way, that's also sometimes how coaches are telling them to play. So who knows what the plans for some of these guys are, and who's to say there's not another level? 3 years ago, I would have told you Jack Quinn had a way brighter future than JJ Peterka. And look at where Peterka's gone. Who's to say Jack Quinn can't have a bounce back? Am I betting on it? No. But
point per game the last 13 games last year.
And when you look at some of these young guys, like, this needs to be stated. This is a different young team than what they were the last 3 years. You had a line in Cousins, Peterka, Quinn that was a second line that was in over their heads, great offensive skill, yes, but horrible defensively. Literally like zero effort in their own end of the ice, like embarrassing level of effort that demanded accountability, but then when held accountable, ran away from accountability. Like, Cousins could talk the talk in the locker room. He didn't do the talk on the ice outside of the one time he got his face punched in. Peterka couldn't handle Lindy Ruff calling him out defensively. Even Quinn had moments where he was late for a practice in Minnesota. Those guys had skill, but there's a difference between skill and playing hockey the right way. Skill, like, you could score at any given time, but are you making the right defensive play? Are you dumping it in the corner when you're up 2 goals late in the second period to do the right thing? I don't believe those guys played hockey the right way. I believe they all played a selfish, immature, young style of hockey where, no offense to themselves, that's probably how they played their entire lives, but they didn't play what was needed at the NHL level to play winning hockey. And when I watch Benson play, does he put up the points that Cousins, Quinn, or Peterka do? No. He's a better player than them. Why? Because he does what is required to win games. He goes in the corner. He will forecheck despite being undersized. He'll find loose pucks. He'll make the proper pass. He is responsible defensively. Even Kulik, like, who knows what he really is long term? But even if he was just Victor Olofsson, a better Victor Olofsson, that's what this power play needs. They need a shot to balance out the power play. If you have Tage on one side, you need somebody on the other side. So what teams just don't just go over to Tage's side to stop him all the time. And then I look at Quinn, like, okay, if Quinn is Quinn, at least it's just one player now and not 3 players that are the same version of him. And finally, Doan. We don't know what Doan is, but know what he is. He's a battler. He battles. He's rugged, and his analytics are pretty good. So you know he has that 20-goal potential. He's good on the power play. So, like, these young guys, I'm less inclined to say, like, it's all dependent on them. Because even if they don't put up the points, I think a lot of them do the right things where they are not going to hurt you as much as what the last group of young guys did, even if the last group of young guys might have been more individually talented. This group is going to play more of a smart, balanced version of hockey, which is more conducive to winning hockey.
Exactly. And that's my biggest thing, Bunt, of how this team is going to get to that next level is it's not going to be, obviously this year it's not going to be that sexy pickup, but it's going to be the JJ Peterka trade obviously has to work, but it's so much more than just the trade itself. It basically changed I don't want to say the whole philosophy of the Sabres team, but one from the perspective of you're really moving away from this core. You got rid of Dylan Cousins at the trade deadline. Peterka's gone. You're bringing that kind of new crop of younger guys and kind of changing things around, but really changing the identity of the team too, where you're focusing more on that two-way side of the game. Josh Stone, interesting. So over the course of like an 82-game season, he'd average over like 40 points or something like that. He was averaging like only 13 minutes a game last season, which is identical to what like someone Peyton Krebs did. Josh Stone is going to be able to move up and down the lineup, kind of like what we saw a little bit, I think, this past season with Ryan McLeod, where if you put him on the third line, he's a really solid aspect there. But if you have to throw him on the first line with Tage, scoring isn't going to come to a screeching halt because he's there. I'm super excited to see what happens with him there. But, I mean, a couple of things that need to happen all stem around the Sabres changing their identity there. They become better defensively. You're going to have better numbers from UPL. Like, that's just going to happen. The Sabres gave up a ton of, I felt like, high danger chances a game. They gave the most rebound goals against the game last year. Really, big analytics show right now. So I think having a Kesselring there, Connor Timmins too, really shoring up that third pairing, can get the Sabres decor in a place that feels stable for the first time, it seems like, in forever, where it was basically, okay, we have Rasmus Dahlin. We can throw whoever we have next to him. That'll be serviceable. Owen Power, we're going to hope it's a good night for him in the third pair. Hope they don't get scored on. Now it feels like they have three lines that can at least go out and not kind of flail everywhere. That's going to help out the whole roster. But the Peterka trade especially, if you look at Michael Kesselring, if he can get Owen Power to that next level, like that's already a big win for Buffalo, where, I mean, if you have Dahlin being Dahlin, Power getting to that next level, this team is going to be significantly better in their own end, but also putting up more points that you're missing. Hair's looking good. I appreciate it, Matt. Appreciate everyone hopping in. Josh, Slick, Steve, good to see you all. Josh too. Sabres power play was bad last year. They kind of figured out a bit more toward the end, but Bunty, like you were saying, with adding Kulik there, having some different options is going to be what's going to supplement losing the Peterka scoring. You're going to be better all around, but you need to be able to add to your power play. And one last thing too, I know Bunty, like you can't build around injuries and hypothetical, but they're going to happen at some point somewhere. The part that's super interesting to me about the way Kevyn Adams built this team is he's leaving that space open like he did last year for young guys to step in, where you saw Yuri Kulik start the year in Rochester, get called up to Buffalo. Now he's basically pegged as the first line center after all that. Like, obviously you can't bank on these young guys who got chances last year with Oslin, Roseanne to maybe step into roles if need be. But Kevyn Adams seems to, the way the roster is right now, you kind of have one extra guy on the forward side, but if more injuries happen, you're going to be calling up these young guys. And it kind of feels like that last chance for them to get a real good look here in Buffalo, because it feels like this is kind of the team moving forward for the most part. You don't have a ton of, older players on that front, but special team Slick, not good for us last year. But like Bunt and I were saying, it's for this team to get better. It's not just about bringing more forwards who can score more goals. But I think I've heard you say this a million times. Like, the Sabres don't have a problem scoring goals. It's keeping the puck out of the net. So I think that's what we're going to get to this year. That they need to be better on all facets of that front, Bunty. Any other things that's kind of you're looking toward this season? I know we talked about the defensive side of the puck and ways they need to get better, but any other things on that front that you're really looking to the Sabres team to either take a step in or not regress? Point two, because I think a point that I don't even think we've talked about too much is, you have Ryan McLeod, who had a career year last year. They're also relying on Jason Zucker, Jordan Greenway, just to kind of stay the course. So what are you looking at next year on that front?
Yeah, when it comes to this roster, it's weird because there's things I like about it. I really do like certain things about this team, and they do feel more mature. They do feel like they have more veteran leadership on it than what they've had in the past. That's the frustrating thing, because you really do feel like they're one move away from really kind of getting there. Mike Harrington, to his credit, he consistently says how Wait 1 second. I'm sorry. My wife was with my dog, and she's making some noise, so I have no idea what's going on right now.
Hey, if I need to step in, call me in, coach.
No, but what I was gonna say is I really do kind of like this roster, and I wish they just would have made that one bold move to really make them go over the top. It was clear watching Sabres embedded that they're higher on Doan than what a lot of people think. And when I go through the talent on this team, you got Thompson that's a 40-goal scorer. You have Tuck that's a 30-goal scorer. You have Norris that scored 30 plus in a season. You have Zucker. You have McLeod that both scored 20 last year. You have Quinn that has 20 plus goal potential. Like, you got 6 guys that can score 20 plus goals for you, and then you got. I guess this is the part that like stinks. Like, you say all those names, and then you're like, well, Benson Kulik might be on your first line with Tage Thompson. And then you're like, oh, that doesn't sound great, having a 20-year-old and a 21 or 22-year-old being relied on to carry your team. But then I think you can break it up in different ways. I really do believe the Sabres are higher on Josh Norris than what the general public is on him. And that's the risks they're willing to take. So, like, it really, like, you think about it, we're looking at it as this team didn't make a bold move. They might be looking at it as we did. We brought in Josh Norris. That is our bold move. And to me, that's not enough. But to them, they could say, well, in the last 6 months, we brought in Josh Norris. We brought in Kesselring. We brought in Doan. We brought in Connor Timmins. We got Danforth. They could say we changed 5, and then we brought in a goalie. They could say we changed 6 players on our roster. So, like, you talk about it like that, that's actually a little bit that's pretty substantial. The problem where fans come in is you have the $5+ million in cap space available, and you have 2 young players in Kulik and Benson that are going to be on your top line. So it's like you could have done a little more, but yeah,
because they have a lot of contracts they need to sign next season, and they're paying Skinner like $6 million to not be here. Like, Kesselring's only making like 1.3 right now. His contract's up next year. I think Benson's also up next. Like, they have that cap space isn't going to be there next year. And if it is, we have big issues. So
hopefully, like, but we've been talking about, like, eventually they're going to spend to the cap. Eventually they're going to spend to the cap, and it never really
has to be next year.
It never ends up happening. But you mentioned those forwards. Like, I look at it like, who knows where McLeod and Zucker are going to play? But those are quality guys.
Good third line.
You got Norris that's quality. You got Thompson that's quality. You got Tuck. So, like, there is guys throughout those first 3 lines. And if Doan and Greenway can play valuable minutes on the ice, like that forward group, it has some ability. Defensively, Dahlin, to me, he's ready to be one of the best defensemen in the league.
He's already there.
He already is there, but, like, he could be the best defenseman in the league if he brings it to another level, and if this team ever has some success. I do believe that Power can be that guy too. And
what's a consistent D partner in Kesselring?
Kesselring is a big part of this. Byram playing with Dahlin, I think that's a good thing. Mm-hmm. Even the third line, if Timmins is an upgrade over Clifton, that helps you out by default. And I know I'm not a Samuelson guy. Samuelson on a third pair with, like, Timmins, it doesn't sound horrible to me. And I'm not going to, like, say it's great because I'll get killed by Sabres fans. And I did want him bought out. But on a third line, limited minutes, like, not the worst case. And if UPL struggles in the beginning of the year, you give Alex Lyon the chance to earn the net. And if UPL continues this whole crap of I can't play when there's pressure on me to keep the job, well, then you're not an NHL starting goalie, and goodbye. Like, goodbye at that moment in time. Like, I'm tired of all of this. Well, UPL can only play when he's getting like 50+ starts, and Levi needs to not play once a week. He can't play when he doesn't get any starts. Like, okay, so you have one goalie that's only good when he gets the net all the time. You have another goalie that's not good when he doesn't get at least the net a little bit of time. Well, that tells me we have no goalies at this point in time. So if UPL doesn't step up, I'm confident that Alex Lyon will be more than glad to have an opportunity to try to win a starting goalie position, because even though he's not young, he's 32. He could be good for the next 3, 4, 5 years. And if UPL has an 87, 88 save percentage, give it to Lyon and don't look back. And you know what? If Lyon wins the job and he does good, then know what you do next year? You get rid of UPL and you have a Lyon Levi pairing. And if Lyons stinks, well, then get another goalie. Hope one of them steps up. And if you get good defense in front of them and both of them stink, well, then you just know they're horrible goalies. So I don't know. I don't want to say I'm positive on this team because it's hard to be. It's weird. I think I'm more positive than 90% of Sabres fans. But at the same time, I'm picking them to have 85 points. So when I'm saying I'm more positive than 90% of Sabres fans, I'm still missing them to miss the playoffs by like 5 to 7 points. It just tells you about the state of the franchise.
Yeah, exactly that. It's, basically everything you said there. It is interesting you talk about goaltending on that front where the Sabres and Levi haven't come to a deal yet, right? That's not something in my head.
I don't
think so. No.
But Levi has no negotiating rights the way he currently is. So he's just gonna have to take whatever they decide to give him.
Yeah, and we saw with Luukkonen the year 2 years ago he had his career year. He started the year as their third string goalie behind Levi, who was the 1, and then Craig Anderson as the 2. He might be someone too that kind of needs that push to be that top level goalie. That competition. Alex Lyon's going to be a lot more than James Reimer was, who was 37 and on his last legs in Buffalo. So I'm hoping that competition can bring that next level out of Luukkonen because they'll really need it. And I like Josh's question here. The Sabres have Tage Thompson and Rasmus Dahlin, 2 cornerstone players of franchises. Bunty, where would you rank that? I can go first if you want a second, because I've been looking at this comment for a little bit. But
I'll let you go first.
In my head, you have one of the top defensemen in the league. He can play both sides of the puck too. Dahlin's defensive game has been skyrocketing the past 2 years, let's say. And then Tage Thompson, a consistent 40-goal scorer when he's healthy. I don't know how you don't have that in the top 5 of the league of just top forward, top defenseman. That's there. The Sabres should be able to build around it. And again, that's been the issue for probably 10 years of just unable to put the right pieces with core players and have that succeed here. So we'll see what happens this year on that front. But
that's what's frustrating about it.
It's there.
They get rid of Eichel and Reinhart. These guys go on to have massive success on other teams, and you're like, well, how are they ever going to replace it? And then Tage Thompson becomes one of the best goal scorers in the NHL, and they almost make the playoffs. And you think they're on the way up, and oh my God, they got better by getting rid of Eichel and Reinhart, and they really did. Even if that wasn't the reason why. And then you got Rasmus Dahlin, who's finally figuring out his game. You're like, oh, my God, it's finally happening. We're finally figuring this out. We have Cousins. We got Peterka. We got all these young guys. We got number 1 overall pick and Owen Power. And then, it just comes crashing down again. That's the part that's probably frustrating for them, internally. It's they thought they had figured it out. And they doubled down on it. And then they tripled down on it. And now it's oh, I guess it didn't work out. And there's this feeling that if this year goes bad, that Thompson and Dahlin are going to want out. Honestly, I have my hesitations that the Sabres would actually trade either of those, because I look at the guys that they traded in the past and what led to it. And there was circumstances that led to him. O'Reilly wanted out because of his relationship with Jack Eichel. That was pretty well known behind the scenes. You look at a person like Eichel. Eichel wanted out, but he can say the surgery, but he requested a trade before the surgery. So he just wanted out. Reinhart was willing to stay, but then wanted out once it was I've given you so much time. You haven't extended me. You haven't shown long-term commitment. I'm not doing another rebuild. I'm done with this crap. So that all made sense. The Peterka one was the first one where I'm this is kind of bullshit. But Peterka, say what you want. He didn't want out because he was tired of being with a loser. He was on the team for 3 years, and the first year they almost made the playoffs. Peterka wanted out for whatever ulterior motives that he wanted out. Maybe it had to do with the city. Maybe it had to do with the organization. Maybe it had to do with Lindy Ruff, playing style. It could be anything. For us to speculate and say, oh, it's just because the team stinks. Well, I don't believe that's the main contributor. I think there was other things that played into his thinking overall. And then Cousins, he signed an extension. We traded him because the fans grew more tired of him than anything else. Now, you look at Thompson and Dahlin. I think that Thompson and Dahlin might get discontent at some point. I think they might voice their frustrations internally at some point.
And they should. I'd be worried if they weren't.
They might even request a trade at some point. The difference is, can you see Thompson or Dahlin being a troublemaker off the ice? Can you see them causing havoc? Can you see them being a dick to their teammates and other people? Dahlin's the captain, but he's a different type of captain than Eichel. Dahlin's a captain that he gets frustrated because of his passion, but he wants to turn it around and he wants to do it the right way. Did I say Thompson? I meant Dahlin when I said captain.
Yeah, I know what you meant.
So Dahlin with all of that.
Yes.
But when I'm talking about Thompson, though, he wants to. He does things the right way. I've heard him say great things about Buffalo. He seems to be
He's
really
here this summer too, which is a big thing.
Thompson seems like a great guy on and off the ice. So, first of all, I think they want to be part of the solution. And then number two, if they're not going to cause a problem in on or off the ice, then what's the Sabres' motivation to trading them? Like, unless you're getting some crazy return. But a team that's trying to trade for Thompson and Dahlin, they're trading for them to try to get to that next level. They're not going to be selling their good guys. So you're not going to get fair return for either of them. And so, like, if you trade them, you're just indicating another rebuild. And
yeah, I can't even think about the possibility.
And you'd already be on year 15 of a drought. So it's like, at this point, like, you're better off just having them pissed off in Buffalo and just be like, guys, unfortunately, you signed long-term contracts in this sport. You're obligated to finish that out. You can retire if you want, but like you're not going elsewhere during that period of time. Like you'd have to play some hardball, to be honest. Like I think you would have to be like, guys, it is what it is, and you know what? I don't anticipate that being as big of a problem as what a lot of the fan base thinks. But we didn't even see Peterka being an issue. But I will say people behind the scenes did give some clues about Peterka going all the way back to November. So maybe if we had read the tea leaves better, we could have identified that sooner.
Yeah, I mean, again, not to read into stuff too, but even like after he'd score a goal, there was no passion and emotion there most of the time, which always felt off. So we'll see what him not being in Buffalo will kind of change culture-wise for the Sabres too. And I want to go back to a comment Steve had a while ago of just with Quinn having this full offseason. I feel like it's felt like every single offseason up until now he's had some injury or something he's dealing with. He had his Achilles 2 summers ago, something like that. You think of Josh Norris as well, where the team just shut him down the rest of the season after he had an injury that wasn't something he had before. So hopefully he can have a full summer of development there. And there's a lot of guys in the Sabres last year who were out for extended time that hopefully they can come back into the season feeling better, whether that be like a Jordan Greenway. The Sabres only had 2 guys last season play all 82 games. That was Bowen Byram and oh my God, I can't believe I'm blanking on the second one. But yeah, Byram was one, and then there's a forward on the other side of things. So they hopefully can come back healthier next season and have that through there. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what that opening lineup looks like to Bunty. I think you see a lot of mock lines online. We see, you talked about earlier, of Kulik, Benson, Thompson on line 1. But
I think Norris might have a chance to be line 1. Doesn't that seem a little do you really think Lindy Ruff is going to trust Benson and Kulik to start the season on the first line with Thompson?
I'd be concerned if that was the case, because it wasn't like they caught fire at the end of last year and you're just going to try to keep going with that. Like, it worked, it was serviceable, but it wasn't this, oh my God, this is something that needs to happen for the Sabres. I don't know.
Norris. I think Norris is going to be on the first line to open the season.
Also with Tage too. I mean, it just became set in stone that he's not a center anymore. Like he found his game playing up the middle, and then I'm assuming because of injury he got moved to the wing.
Supposedly prefers being on the wing.
Yeah.
So at that point, if he prefers it and he's had success at it, like before, like it was like he moved to center and that's when he broke out. But now we've seen him have success at both positions. So I don't think it matters as much now. Here's what I'll say without looking at the lines.
Yeah.
When you talk about McLeod and Zucker, they could play the second line or the third line. When you look at Thompson, he has to be on your top line.
Yes.
Like he has Norris, he could be on your second line. but he's now the Dylan Cousins contract, a little bit higher. So Norris is now getting paid to be an impact player. And here's the crazy thing about Norris. We all act like he's going to play like 40 games and he's going to get like an injury like the second game of the season and be out for like 4 weeks. What are your – and this is like hypothetical like devil's advocate world.
Yeah.
What are your point projections for like Norris if he plays like 80 games? Because like in that scenario, if he plays 80 games and he's playing with Tage Thompson as a line mate, and I know Norris is not like a creator, he's more of a finisher, so it might be a little risky to have him and Thompson on the same line. Like if Norris is a first or second liner on this team and he plays 80 games, like I'm projecting like 30 goals, like 25 to 30 assists and like 60 points. Like
at least.
Like so like you hear that and you're like, "Oh, shit." Like that would make a difference. Like that's a top 6 player. It's like we forget he's even part of the team. And
100%.
And
he was great when he was here.
I know you can't just count on him being healthy, but we said the same thing about Bo Byram and concussions, and then he played a full season last year. So
all 82.
I there's part of me in my head that thinks that like we're talking up the Norris injuries too much. That there is a like because what happened last year, what happened 2 years ago doesn't mean it's going to happen going forward. Each injury is unique, and they happen for different reasons, unless it's the same thing happening over and over and over again, and that's a pattern. But from what I've read, a lot of these are not interconnected with him, at least recently. So
what about the Steve comment here?
I think I'd be fine with McLeod as
I think it'd be an injury for me to get him out too.
The tough part with like Kulik as a 3 is like it kind of goes to like the kid line stuff. Like, does he do the things on the third line that you want? But they said in Rochester he did start developing a more all-around game. Now, is that
Kulik wasn't bad defensively?
That is American Hockey League versus NHL. But the thing is, it's like the tough part with like McLeod moving him to the second line is like it just feels so perfect. McLeod, Zucker, Doan, or like McLeod, Zucker, Greenway. Where like that third line, like you look at it and you're like, "Yep, I love it. Like I love it. Really cool." And then you're like, Thompson, just carry the first line. And then you're like, where do you put Tuck? You can put Tuck anywhere. And then you don't have to worry that. See, like that's the part like I keep getting to with Norris on this team and Tuck on this team. If you can have some combination of McLeod, Zucker, Doan on your third line, or McLeod, Zucker, Greenway, then you have a spot where like okay, you put Norris or Tuck on the first line. You got a first line with Thompson and a 30-goal scorer, and then one of them is on the second line. You have a 30-goal scorer. And hopefully whoever the better one defensively, you have Quinn on their line to make up for whatever liability Quinn's going to be. And then you compare Benson, so I don't know, like this is where I struggle. Like I know on paper they are not a top tier roster, but I also look at them on paper and I say, we say they're not a top tier roster because they have a lot of youth and experience. And then I say, well, what if Benson takes a leap? What if and this is why this is why they personally stink, because Kevin Adams is doing the same thing I'm doing right now instead of getting like proven players. But if you are an optimistic fan or you want to have reason for hope, there is enough talent to get them to the playoffs. It's relying on people that are entering their late 20s to mesh with people in their early 20s, with guys that are mid, like with like the Zucker, the Greenways, the McLeods, to mesh with a defensive unit that has roller coaster nights. Like that's like honestly, man, like this Sabres team, I think they're better than the 91-point team.
Right? Oh, yeah, on paper, yes.
Yeah, like on paper, this Sabres team is better than the 91-point team.
Yes.
And they had 3 years in a row of, or maybe it was 2 years in a row. They had 2 years in a row of internal growth. they had the 1 year where they were like 76, 77 points, maybe 75 points, but they were expected to be horrible. That was like the first year when like Eichel was traded, Tuck comes mid-season, you get Krebs, and the next year, the 91 point. And then they've had 2 years of dropping down since then, going to 84 points and then going to 79 points. You don't typically just continue going upward or continue going downward. Normally, like a graph will like have like certain ebbs and flows. So like if this is what they were for the 2 years in a row, and then they were like this for the other 2 years, like there should be an up right here.
Yes.
Like,
Gotta buy low.
There should be an up, but we're Sabres fans. Like we also know that could also go like straight down. So that's what I struggle with, is that like I truly think this is a get better, get back on track type year. But I also feel they're one move away from, and not just being a get better, get back on track year, but like they're one move away from we should make it.
Yeah,
they're one move away from like we should definitely be in that discussion.
And it's
Because
also
I don't think Montreal's that much better than the Sabres.
No.
I don't think Ottawa's that much better than the Sabres. I don't think Detroit is either. Those are all mid-average teams. Boston is tanking, I think, this year.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know, man. Who's to say like year 2 under Lindy they figure some things out and it gets going for them. Like I don't want to pick it though. I'm not gonna pick it. 85 points. Don't let me control me, Gatesy.
I need like a little shot collar just to. Yeah. If I hear the word 9 start coming out of your mouth,
if anything starts with a 9 or 90, stop me.
Or the
85
P word. No playoffs coming out of Bunty's
no playoffs.
Mouth. No, I mean I'm at that same point too, where I think I've talked myself and thought myself into a circle where, going back to last offseason, the Sabres got clowned online for giving up, a high value prospect who's going to be a big goal scorer in the NHL, Matt Savoy, for as a hockey player of Ryan McLeod, who turned out to really help out the Sabres in the middle, kind of round out their game a bit more. I just keep telling myself that this Peterka trade is in that same realm where they're losing a guy who can put a puck in the net. And if you look at hockey strictly as, a guy is only good as scoring goals, and that's the only value they can bring to a team. Yeah, the Sabres got dog walked here. But I keep telling myself that the players they brought in are going to make this team better on so many other facets other than themselves putting pucks in that. They're going to help their teammates do that. They're going to play a better game where they're not allowing as many goals. We talked earlier in the show too of, they're going to be in more lower scoring games that can get to overtime more, pick up a couple points there that they've thrown away in other years. And that's where I'm at now is I really do see that being a benefit for the Sabres of they're not making those sexy, especially this offseason, they're not making the sexy moves, but they're making, in my mind, the right ones to make this team better, where we talk, they have Tage Thompson, they have Rasmus Dahlin. It's not like they have a lack of top-end star power. It's been the middle help and finding ways to elevate the rest of the roster, where I think these moves can do that. Would that be Josh Doan as well, who can play both sides of the puck? And go through some comments here as well. As Josh said, yeah, I mean, there was a comment too. I think Josh, you said it earlier about just like the Bills believing. I also want to tell myself too that the guys that have been here long, like the Dahlin Thompson, the young guys, like they've seen, like even Dahlin was, close to what he got here when the Bills, weren't good, and then they became good, and they saw how the city rallied around the Bills. Like, I don't know how that isn't just a feeling in the locker room of wanting that feeling from the city and getting that over the edge of, and not having the wheels fall off the bus. Because
do you feel like this team even feels connected to the city and the fans? Like, I almost feel like it's been so long since they've been good that most of these players, they were young the last time the Sabres even made the playoffs. Like, you think about 14 years, like even the veterans on the team. So like, yeah, Zucker would have memories of like the Sabres being halfway decent, but like Tage Thompson, like what's he, 28 right now? Like you go 29, like you're talking about a guy that was like 15 years old the last time the Sabres made the playoffs. You got to go back to like basically him being like a 10-year-old, a 9-year-old the last time they won a playoff series. So
Zach Benson.
That's what I'm saying. Like a lot of these guys they have no collection of the Sabres being relevant at all during their entire lives. Like they don't know about the Wilson Farms medallions. They don't know about the party in the plazas where people are holding up the Stanley Cup. Like none of that. Like they've never
Population of
experienced.
Pominville.
They like their greatest moments are like mini winning streaks, like in front of 15,000 fans or RJ nights or like, and like to me, that's like the sad thing is also like during that time, social media has come out and a lot of fans and we act like this shouldn't impact players, but they absolutely see what people put on social media. We rip this team apart and rightfully so. Like the team deserves to get ripped apart, but a lot of these players haven't been part of it the entire time and they take that stuff personally. And I do, and you hear about when they were booed off the ice the one time, how they took offense to it and they were angry. And everybody's like, oh, they're professional players. Like, it's not a big deal. Like, it'll be fine. But, like, it came out like they actually had players that had resentment towards fans. So, like, when we say, like, do they want to do it for the fans? Maybe from a PR standpoint, they'll say it. But that might be part of the problem. They might not want to do it for the fans because they really might not even have that connection to the fans. They want to do it for themselves.
Well, that's where I think the culture changes too, Bunty, where you have Dali now as the captain. He feels like the guy that wants to make that change. Thompson's here this summer, which doesn't seem like much, but I think it's super important to have your top guy stay in Buffalo, train here over the summer. They got the new strength and conditioning coach here. And I guess I don't know the weird specifics of like NHL, CBA, working with strength coaches, but he's here in Buffalo working, skating. And I think that's going to help make that culture shift where your top guys, your leadership guys, they're not the young guns anymore. Darlene Thompson, like they are the guys you turn to on the team now. You have your young guys and your Kuliks, your Bensons that can learn from leadership that has been around the game. And while they haven't been to those levels, like the postseason, I think have an idea of what it's like to play in Buffalo, where it is a bit different. Like you're talking about guys getting booed off the ice, where if you get booed off the ice in Buffalo, it's for the past 15 years and everything. But if you get booed out in MSG, it's, I think, a totally different reason. What's Josh saying here? Wait for training camp, head out to Lakeshore Hockey. I mean, that'd be a little, it's like Bill's gone to St. John Fisher, something like that. OTD, good to see you. Long time no see. And then Mikey C with a hit on Thompson too. Like, I mean, that was obviously a big talking point last season, Bunty. I think that got talked to death, as rightfully so.
Notice a lot changed after that point.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
And this is the part about the Sabres that gives me hope. That's my dog barking, in case you can hear it.
What's the dog's name?
Bella.
Bella. Shout out Bella.
She heard me clap and instantly she decided to freak out.
She heard 91 points and got a little worked up.
But this is what I was going to say. That hit last year, that made a big difference because what happened after that point in time? First of all, the Sabres were embarrassed. And you could tell Tage Thompson was embarrassed by it a ton because he went on a podcast this offseason and even talked about it. Like, yeah, even if like they didn't see what happened, like you'd think they would stand up for the top goal scorer on their team and do something. Like you got to do something. You can't just stand there. Even if it was clean, do something. Like stand up for your teammate. Bella was showing her hope. But then what happened after that point? Supposedly they had meetings. And then what did you see the whole rest of the season? Somebody would lightly tap the goalie and you'd see an exaggerated response. You were seeing exaggerated responses, but some people would say, well, that's just an act. To me, though, the Sabres never even had the act going early on in the year. They wouldn't even show the teeniest of effort. So to me, that showed we're self-aware that the league thinks we're a bunch of soft players that don't care about our teammates and just put ourselves first. What also happened at that point? Trade deadline. Dylan Cousins moves. I think that was a big one too because in these embeddeds, everybody's like, well, there's Sabres PR. They tell you what you want to hear. Well, there's an aspect of that. Lindy Ruff said it in that embedded several times. Like, we don't have the right culture in this room. He's like, there's guys that I thought were going to be a certain way coming in that just aren't the way I thought they would be. I think he was referring to Cousins. I believe he was referring to Peterka, Samuelson, and maybe there's a few other guys. But Definitely Cousins. Cousins to me, and I'll get hate if Senators fans are listening to this because I was a Cousins guy. I liked Cousins. Cousins was a fake talker where he would talk the right things in the locker room, but he did not follow through with any of the stuff on the ice.
Well, it was like his last game, Bunty, where he had that scrum in front of the net and just stood there. And
against Tampa, yeah, did nothing. How many times did Cousins be like, we got to learn from this. We got to be better. We got to stand up for our teammates. Other than him getting his face knocked in one time, never did anything later on in his career. Maybe earlier he did some of the stuff. And he was billed as a two-way player. Didn't play a lick of defense when I was watching him. Peterka is another guy. Could score the goals, but how many of those goals were in meaningful minutes? How many times did he have emotion? I know that's a bad indicator. Like some people were more emotional, other ones are less emotional. But early in the year, Peterka got off to a really slow start. And then you look at him, Lindy Ruff calls out his defense, just horrible defensively, not good on the power play, great on the rush, great sniper, great finish, 5-on-5, unbelievable. But I think Peterka was a guy that wasn't a Lindy fit. And just because Lindy doesn't like you doesn't mean that you're not a good player. And sometimes it's just not a fit. Miroslav Shatan scored 40 goals with the Sabres one season, and he was always in Lindy's doghouse, despite being the most skilled scorer on the Sabres in the late 90s. Sometimes you got to bring another aspect to the game. And then Matthias Samuelsson, like you're brought in, you have an A slapped on your chest. You're supposed to be a defensive defenseman. That's supposed to be a guy that people look to as a leader. You're well liked by your teammates. And then you do nothing when you're the most important player on your team, besides Dahlin, is laying on the ice. So what I think happened after that hit was that things got real. They had a heart-to-heart. They had talks in the locker room, and they were like basically saying, this can't happen anymore. Yeah, are we playing for anything the rest of the year? Doesn't appear to be, but we gotta at least show that we care, that this is not fake, that we legitimately are an NHL team. And I think at that point onward, you saw a better response, you saw a harder working team, and then what did they also do? They pulled UPL for a good portion of time.
Yeah, I think the last 15 games, he only played 5 of them, something like that.
And UPL supposedly didn't like that. He was angry. But you know what you saw?
Sure.
You saw when you have good goaltending, you can win on nights where you don't have your best hockey. And that's what this team has been lacking so much. They can only win when they're playing good hockey because their goaltending has been so horrendous that they didn't steal games. Well, suddenly Reimer comes in, and he looks like the next coming of, like, Patrick Waugh. James Reimer didn't suddenly learn how to play hockey. It's just that UPL had the bar so low that anybody just playing adequate looked like a massive improvement. So you suddenly have a team standing up for each other. You get a little bit better goaltending, and then you get a little bit of that spunk with Kulik and Benson playing with Thompson and feeling that energy. Sometimes youngsters can play stupid, but other times youngsters can make you feel the love of hockey again.
A lot of emotion.
Because when they're playing for the team, you can feel that energy. And that's what the Sabres had when Peterka, Cousins, and Quinn were in that first year together. They were the kid line. They were beating off of each other. They had the energy. People could feel it. And then somewhere along the line, their play got exposed, and they never adapted to how teams started defending them. And they basically got exposed as we can only play on the rush. We cannot play dump and chase. We cannot play any lick of defense. And basically at that point in time, once they got exposed, that's when a young player has to develop that next part of their game. They have to figure out, what am I going to do when the times get tough? And when the times got tough for Cousins, Quinn, sometimes for Peterka, they just let it linger, and next
snowball.
thing you have 13-game losing streaks. Why?
Yeah.
Because you're a team dependent on too much youth to carry you, and they're not mentally strong enough to do what they need to get the team through these streaks. So bad streaks become very bad streaks, and then you kill everything. And that's what I think the stuff that, like, internally, we're all like, okay, not externally, I mean, we're all like, oh, it sucks that they lost Peterka and, like, they lose Cousins. And people that watch hockey, they're like, oh, this bad Sabres are just continuously making bad moves. I think internally, if you're Dahlin, you're Thompson, and this is all speculation on my part, if you know that Peterka and Cousins don't play a lick of defense, that their mistake in the third period cost you a game, and that they aren't holding themselves accountable. They're not changing what they need to do. They're not listening to the coach. Like, and I'm not saying this is just them, like, but like I'm using this as an example. Internally, you're probably like, yeah, those guys are good, but like we're not getting anywhere because these guys aren't doing what we need them to do. And I think that's part of the disconnect between the fan base and the team is that the fan base looks at numbers and we look at all the losing and we say, we stink and then you got rid of this guy? Oh my God, we're going to stink even worse. While inside the building, I think their thought is, yeah, we haven't been good. And yes, this guy puts up numbers, but this guy's numbers don't help us win. And what we do need to win, we'll take 20 less points than somebody that plays defense. And that's going to do more for us in the long run. And
100% will.
And we'll see on the ice if they're right or not. If they're right, they're going to prove a lot of people wrong, and it'll be great. If they're wrong, we're going to be making fun of them for missing the playoffs the 15th consecutive season.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head there. And I think it's exactly that point. We see Lindy Ruff being a part of, decisions being made about the roster. And that's only going to help this team, in my opinion, where the Sabres, it feels like forever, structure has always been every year they've been doing something else. And to have some consistency and build a team around structure as well, I think is going to be super important in getting this team over that hump, at least in terms of not going on massive losing streaks where they're not playing with emotion, they're playing within the system, and that can kind of get them through some tough times. And yeah, Steve, like Ryan and Anderson both had calming effects on the team. Vets are important, 100% the case, and especially in net. Like the Sabres don't need UPL to go out and Santa's head make all these backdoor saves. One, that's an issue with them that they shouldn't be having anymore because they should be better defensively. They needed to make the right saves, keep them in the game early, and so they're not falling behind early in games, which we saw a lot in the past. So I think that is a big thing for Buffalo. And I think we're going to see that improvement next year is just that overall consistent play throughout the lineup where even like a small thing, Bunty, of the Sabres aren't going to be relying on the rush as much of like that Quinn line, like Quinn, Peterka, Cousins.
Like inconsistent. Like you think about it, what I said earlier, low scoring, defensive, steal points, grind away versus rush, inconsistency, up and down. Like you can almost tell what they're trying to do.
Yes, 100%.
Like,
and I'm not like advocating the Sabres become a dump and chase team, but you rely solely on the rush. That's just more time the puck's going to be in your own end because you're not having possession. Like
it's balance. It's all balance. It's like the Bills. What helped them make that jump last year? For the longest time under Dable and Dorsey, pass, and then everybody says, "Well, the NFL, it's not a running league anymore. You got to air it out. You got to throw it." And then Josh Allen wins MVP with his lowest passing total since 2019. And how did they do it? Well, they ran the ball effectively. They controlled the ball. They didn't turn it over, but they were balanced. When teams wanted to take out the pass, they had an answer to the run. When teams wanted to take out the run, they could pass it. They had answers to different things, and now this year it's going to be even better for them. But like that's like the Sabres. When they caught teams off guard originally with the young players, it was because teams weren't prepared for their speed. They weren't prepared for what they were battling. But as teams watched film on them, as teams started learning their style of play, they adapted. The Sabres couldn't adapt, and they had players that weren't able to do the tough stuff. Why was Zucker so amazing last year? Because he was one of the few guys that actually got in front of the goalie on a power play and could finish. He could either deflect a puck. He could get a rebound. He could set a screen. He made things look easier for the players because of what he did on the ice. But the Sabres haven't had that role. They haven't had guys that have stepped up like that. Tuck to a certain extent. That's where this balance comes in. You still have the high-end skill with Thompson, Dahlin, Power. I'll even say like Quinn is high-end skill, even though like production hasn't matched it. But now you got a little bit of that other edginess to you. You got a Kesselring who's going to be physical. You have a Doan who has that two-way game. You have some different guys that mix in and bring different elements. So is it going to work? Like I'm not making any crazy predictions going forward. I am not putting myself on the line after what happened to me last year. But like I see the vision. And a lot of fans, it's really easy to just say, this team sucks. Kevin Adams horrible. Lindy Ruff is washed up. This team is not talented. They're too young. Like, they're going to suck again. They're going to get 60 to 70 points. It's easy to be that guy. But that doesn't mean you know hockey. Like, no offense to most people that say that type of stuff. Most of them are morons. They're just saying the easy stuff that anybody could say.
It's easy to be negative about the Sabres, too. I mean, they give you a lot to work with. But
the hard part is looking at this roster and realizing, despite their struggles, that they actually do have some pieces, that there actually is some logic to what they're doing. But they probably didn't do enough. And that's the hard part, is it's like, I see what they're trying to accomplish. And that's all I ever ask for. I need to see the logic of what you're doing, because if it doesn't make sense to me, then what are you trying to accomplish? I get what they're trying to accomplish. I just don't know if it's the best plan in the world. But at this point, it sounds like they didn't really have any alternatives. So we're just going to have to live with it regardless.
Yeah. And I think that summarizes, everything we've been talking about, Bunty, of we see that process there. We see what's going there. And it's something that, if it can all come together, it's something I believe in that would work for this team. It's just, can these pieces actually put it together in that fashion of staying consistent, of playing this way? Because the way that this team is built right now, like, they need to be on their game and play the right way, for a full 60 minutes. If they have these stretches of they're totally out for lunch for a period, like we've seen in the past year, like this isn't going to work. This isn't going to happen. Like, this is I know it's a buzzword, like a culture thing of they need to be better throughout the whole game. And I think a lot of that comes down there, like Josh said too. The Paterka trade, like, Bunty, I think were we live for it? Yeah, we were live. Yeah. And I remember just looking at it, I was like, oh, like I don't like this. Like, this isn't what I picture, what I wanted. But the more I looked at it, the more I see it, the more I've, watched these two players they brought in, how they build around the Sabres lineup. It's something I can see the vision for, and something I believe is going to make the Sabres better next season than this season. And yeah, I think that's kind of the whole premise of the show, Bunty. I think we've kind of circled back to opening the doors to next season. We've come back, Terry Pegula, Keybank CEO, opening the doors. And I think we see that for the Sabres, that next year is going to be a more balanced game. I know, Josh, you put a comment early in the show of, 1 year the Sabres can score like crazy, and then next year they can't score at all, find that middle ground. I think this year we're going to get close to that middle ground where they're not going to be a top 10 scoring team and the third worst, giving up 3.5 goals a game. So, Bunty, do you have any final thoughts here before we wrap things up?
It's July 30th right now. We're going to have football start soon, but when football starts, that means hockey's not far behind.
Ooh.
And I can't wait, man. It's almost here. We're talking basically a little over 2 months. We got all of August, all of September. Preseason is going to be late September. Mm-hmm. So it's almost here, Gatesy. My favorite time of the year when both of them overlap. And let's hope, man. Let's hope that this is the year things finally get figured out, because this market, and I know you don't know what it's like, and OTD can make fun of me about saying I don't know what it's like, even though I was old enough to remember playoff series wins. I was in high school by that point. This market would go insane if they ever do turn around, and especially if it's a team that they didn't expect it to be. That is what really adds the juice.
You talked about that last show, I think, too, of 05, 6.
No expectations right now. If they surprise people and they get off to like a hot start, watch out. Like, in a lot of games at home, I think the NHL, they probably never say it. They probably want the Sabres to turn things around.
I would say so. I mean, it's not see the TV markets every playoffs. Buffalo's is up there, and there's
been talk about the league being worried about how things are going in Buffalo, and I think that's a true thing. I think they are.
How could they not be?
Like, this is a shitty look, like, for the entire league. So let's hope things turn around, and like we said in other episodes, once this season gets here, we're starting this weekly, so we're gonna have to find a day and time where we can do this every week. maybe I don't know, Thursdays or Fridays. We can figure out something in the future, but I can't wait until this goes weekly.
Yes.
And we're talking Sabres once a week on this podcast.
It'll give us something more concrete to talk about too, where it's not straight hypotheticals and doing our best roster building on here. We got to make sure Steve and Josh, Mikey, OTD, thank you everyone who stopped in today. Got to find a time throughout the season that works for everyone. We can get them all together and talk some Sabres hockey here. And thank you to the over 3,300 people who stopped by tonight, July 30th, to hear us talk about the good Buffalo Sabres. Quick comment from Steve before we wrap things up. Yeah, I mean, we've heard forever. I see it on Facebook all the time. They want grit. So Sabres are going to be better defensively this year, Bunty. We see the vision there. And yeah, thank you again to everyone who stopped by. This is the Crossing Swords podcast presented by Batavia Downs Gaming and Hotel. And we will be back with episodes soon throughout the summer. And then once the Sabres games start, this will be weekly. But until then, let's enjoy the offseason.